of Africa since 1980s, and I have been to every single African countries except Guinea-Bissau. So I suppose I'm more African than Japanese. Okay. So we start from sub-theme 1, knowledge, skills, and competencies for teacher development. It is reported by Professor Joanna Madalinska-Michalak. Did I pronounce correctly? Thank you very much. And she's a professor for social studies, University of Warsaw, and also she's a chair of TEPE, Teacher Education Policies in Europe Network. First time coming to Jamaica, and she's loving it. So thank you very much, Joanna. You have 15 minutes.
How to be serious. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor and pleasure that I have this opportunity and I can present the achievements of the group that work on the sub-theme 1. And as you see, the theme of our group was knowledge, skills, and competences for teacher development. And in our group, we have 4 keynote speakers, and firstly I will present ladies, okay? So we have here in the room Professor Yi-Ling Lau from National Institute of Education from Singapore. We have Professor Maria Flores from University of Minho in Portugal. We have Professor Irma Elof from University of Pretoria, Republic of South Africa. And finally, we have a very interesting presentation by James McIntyre. He represents MasterCard Foundation, and he represents the achievement in Rwanda. And these 4 different presentations, they tackle different issues connected with teacher knowledge, competencies, and skills. And we could learn from our keynote speakers about the country context, and what we found that instead of, let me say, listing what is needed for the teachers regarding the knowledge, regarding the skills and the competences, rather our keynote speakers, they present the country context and the problems that are connected with the teacher professional development. And as you know, because you have the same in your own session, after the keynote speaker presentations, we have 2 sessions, and we try to discuss what was in common. In this presentation, we have had a lot of questions, and we work on recommendations. And truly speaking, it was very difficult job, and probably the other reporters will say the same, because we work under the pressure of the time. And the group was very active. People have, conference participants, have had a lot of ideas regarding sub-theme 1. I tried to manage to capture all these ideas, and let us look at the recommendation from the group 1. I try to, let me say, to distinguish 3 different themes connecting with the teachers' knowledge, skills, competencies for teacher professional development. And firstly, I think it's good to open the discussion and these recommendations looking from the very general point of view. So we thought that it's really important to have this systematic approach and also to build a kind of the synergy within the system. And it was a very good example that we have from the Singapore as a country, that everything what is done for the education is not only connected with the idea that comes from the Institute of Education, but in cooperation with different, let me say, policy makers at different levels. Therefore, they have such a lovely situation that they can say that they have synergy in the country. So in our group, it was very important, what I noticed, to mention that if we would like to work on the teacher professional development, first of all, we have to stress out that it's very significant to work in every country on teacher, let me say, profile of competences, but it's not enough because we would like to have this systemic approach. It's important to work on the competences that we can, let me say, design and expect at different levels of the system. It means that the school as an organization, the ministry, the other institution also should present a kind of the competences that are important for creating the system for teacher professional development. We quote the Incheon Declaration, and our group said that it's really needed nowadays to have efficient, effectively governed system in order to ensure that every teacher and teacher educators, it's really important because we look also at the teacher educators, not only at the teachers, that they are empowered, adequately recruited, they are well-trained, professionally qualified, motivated, and supported within well-resourced system. And therefore, I stress out this, that the system should be well-resourced, because our group said that without, let me say, adequate resources, it would be impossible, in fact, to achieve the goals that we would like to have. And what we noticed that it would be significant to change the situation of education through helping teachers to develop properly. We look at as I said, at the synergy within the system, but also we said that it's very important to create a kind of the interactive relationship between policy, research, and practice. It's not enough to bridge the gap between research, policy, and practice, but we should see how people from this different field, policy, research, and practice, they can work together and they can work for the education. And systematic approach to teachers' development demands to put in the center of the consideration the professionalism of teacher educators, as I said, and teachers. And in the center of our consideration regarding this professionalism should be the issue of teachers, educators, and teachers' identity. So it was, let me say, the first main topic for our recommendations. Then from the general, we tried to look more deeply and in details what we could suggest regarding the recommendations. So I call this quality teachers, quality teacher education towards student well-being and successful learning. As you see, we didn't only discuss the issue of educational achievements of students, achievements that we can measure during different external tests. We put in the center, first of all, students' well-being, because without this issue, it's really hard to think how children they can fulfill their potential. So for us, it was important to stress this, students' well-being and successful learning. And we noticed that, let me say, this situation depends to a great extent on quality teachers and quality teacher education. And we look at the OECD report on education, and we think that it's really worth stressing out that quality teachers need to be seen in the context. We shouldn't talk about the quality teachers education without thinking in which context teachers and students they are immersed. So if we would like to talk about the issue of the quality, we should remember that every discussion on education should take into consideration context. And what can be, let me say, obvious for researchers, for some, for people who work for teacher education, that nowadays we perceive teacher education and teacher professional development like lifelong process, but it's not so obvious. This assumption should be critically examined, because even in Europe, which is quite a well-developed region, we can find countries where teachers, they perceive the career on, let me say, on the level of university, and then they don't see that the lifelong learning process of lifelong learning is important for them. And one issue that was really important for the participants of the group was the issue connected with the teacher educators, and especially with the research. And our colleague from South Africa, Irma, she mentioned that it's really important nowadays to introduce new programs for teachers, educators, but these programs should be based on research. And another group, let me say, which is connected with these recommendations, there are some key elements of developing teachers' knowledge, skills and competences for teacher professional development. So we distinguish 5 different key elements. Maybe I will receive another 2 minutes more. Can I? Oh, thank you so much. So the first element is connected with the role how teachers and teachers educators, how they perceive in the society. We would like to stress out that without the critical, let me say, perception of the role, what is important for teachers, what does it mean their role within the society, we couldn't achieve the right educational learning outcomes regarding students' performance. And another key element, let me say, key message connected with this recommendation is about what I mentioned before, teacher professional continuing development, which we perceive as an essential ingredient for maintaining high quality teaching and for, let me say, having teacher in the career, because in some countries we have the situation that teachers, they start their job and very easily they can quit the job, which is not good for students, as we know. The third point, teaching profession needs to be attractive and satisfying profession. And one of my colleagues from the group, she mentioned, Joanna, please stress out that teachers, they should be optimistic without the positive energy regarding their job, their teaching, the everyday, let me say, their practice. It's impossible, again, to motivate students. So, as you see, we are talking about teacher knowledge, skills and competences, but within this group, yesterday, rather, we work on the teaching profession. How do we see teachers and teaching profession? And another key message was connected with teachers. How do they recognize themselves? What do they know about themselves? And what was significant yesterday, it was the issue about the, let me say, teachers' perception of the of how much they work is how much they know the reality of their work, because lots of young students would like to be teachers, and they usually say that they love teaching. They don't know what are the conditions of their work, and then if they face up with the reality, sometimes very easily they can lose their satisfaction and motivation. So one of the recommendations is to work on teachers' motivation through the whole career. So the issue issue is not only what are the reasons for choosing teaching career, but what are the reasons that teachers, they stay in the career for a long time. And the last point is teachers as a lifelong learners from the beginning of the career should be able to engage in different forms of teacher education, the forms that help them to progress their learning, development, and also these forms should be relevant, because what we can notice, for instance, in Europe, that we have a lot of different trainings, and sometimes they are free, but teachers, they are not interested in it because they don't see that they are relevant for them. And James McIntyre also, he mentioned in his presentation about this, that they can spend a lot of money on offering teachers their trainings, but teachers in Rwanda, they don't see the sense of their professional development, and maybe the issue is how much these trainings, they are directly connected with the teacher needs. And now we have the last point, last minute. I'm not going to develop them maybe during the discussion. The most detailed, let me say, recommendations. So we started from the general, and we go to the detailed recommendations. As you see, how we would like to strengthen teacher education. We use examples, the best practices from different in fact 5 countries, because we have our keynote from Finland tomorrow as well, and we have this. So first of all, as you see, if we would like to help teachers to develop their knowledge, skills and competencies, we should pay attention to teacher ethos and professionalism. Then the teacher education should be values-based. We should work on the strong theory-practice nexus, and so on. You can see at the list. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very rich reporting. The reporting was mainly on the recommendations and very well organized. Thank you very much again. We will not open the floor yet, so if you have a questions, just to keep them in your head, and then after the second reporting, we will open the floor. Okay, second sub-theme is on teacher training, skills and competencies for work, which will be reported by Mr. Reinaldo Hernandes, Director of Formacion General, Duoc, Catholic University in Chile. Actually, he was born in Cuba, just across the sea, 1 hour, but this is the first time for him to come to Jamaica, Montego Bay, and he is also loving it. So thank you very much. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, for me, it was really a pleasure, and it's been a great opportunity to come here and share with other colleagues and delegates from other countries. I'm settled in Chile for the last 10 years. I'm a binational Cuban and Chilean, I have to say that. So our group, we were in charge of discussing the topic, teacher training, skills and competencies for work. We had an amazing team of professionals in the panel. I'd like to introduce them just to start. So Professor Jailani Muhammad Yunus from the University Tun Hussein on Malaysia. So let's give him a round of applause, please. Professor Dr. Charmaine Barrett, who gave the Jamaican touch, and she helped us solve every problem we came across during the breakout session. Thank you very much. She's with the University of Technology of Jamaica. Good to see you. And we have Mr. Christian Stewart, Regional Office for Philippines and Pacific. He was not able to be here today. He's got his flight in the morning. Mr. Peter Greenwood, our most distinguished moderator. He's from UNESCO UNEVOC, Germany. Thank you very much for your patience. And thank you also for having me here in this position today. Okay, so we had also the privilege to share with a group of resourceful delegates yesterday, about 30 to 35 delegates that contributed significantly to the discussion. So our presentation has been divided into two parts. In the first part, I will walk you through the main issues discussed during the breakout sessions yesterday. And in the second part of the presentation, I will share with you the recommendations that somehow respond to the issues raised. For this, for the recommendations part, what we did was we clustered the different recommendations into four thematic groups: policy, system, school, and company, so that the understanding of our recommendation becomes easier for you. Okay. So these were the four presentations that we shared yesterday during the first breakout session. And the outstanding issues, before reading them aloud and sharing them with you, there are some key words that I'd like to remark before we go into details. Regional framework, these are key words and phrases that we managed to compile after the breakout discussions finished. So regional framework, Tibet empowerment, quality standards, ongoing support for teachers, public-private partnership, 21st century skills, and relevant programs. These were words and ideas and suggestions that were continuously presented and discussed along the sessions. So how to seek for government policies that support training opportunities for Tibet teachers that are not trained to teach? Can Tibet take a leadership role as part of the government strategy when taking decisions and creating demand for Tibet? How to develop government policies that back up the public-private partnership in terms of teacher training and student trainees? How to strengthen the public-private partnership in terms of Tibet? How to raise the level of quality standards and core values for Tibet workforce as a whole? How to make the private sector be part of the school decisions. This is really a need, an urgent need for everyone. How can Tibet assure the creation of relevant programs and innovative solutions to the local markets? How to prepare Tibet teachers with industry engagement? How to develop quality assurance systems that guarantee that Tibet graduates are equipped with the skills needed for the changing labor markets? How to offer timely training and preparation for teachers when dealing with demand-driven systems? And can we use standardized models for training Tibet teachers somehow to give an answer or to we collected different positions and we managed to consolidate them into recommendations, so we'll go straight to that. For the policy cluster, we have two recommendations: integrate and promote the role and image of Tibet education and training in sectoral policies. Make Tibet an attractive career with high quality standards in all senses, competitive salaries, and career opportunities. In terms of a system, build capacity for teacher and trainer training, institutions and leaders to deliver quality in-service training. Define and apply responsive and relevant frameworks and standards for Tibet workforce. School. Empower and recognize Tibet workforce in schools to deliver the 21st century skills. Enhance access and participation in continuous professional development, including capacity building and ongoing support for teachers and trainers. Broaden cooperation and engagement between schools, business, and territorial bodies. Company increase support for pedagogy of trainers. Increase opportunities for work-based learning in companies, that is capacity building for company mentors. And we innovated in this stand, and we have a transversal recommendation that goes across the four clusters. Continue to strengthen the evidence base for Tibet teacher training, in particular through studies as well as platforms for cooperation cooperation and knowledge sharing among stakeholders at all levels. So thank you very much. This was all. If you have any questions, the panel will be willing to answer them later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very concise, precise, and yet very practical. So the floor is open now. I think we have about half an hour for questions and answers. Please raise your hand and then introduce yourself, and then questions or comments, please tell us which presenters or which sub-theme you are addressing it to. Questions, comments, or additions from the group? Yes, sir.
There you go.
Microphone, please.
This is Prof. Hamdan Abdulaziz, Hamdan Muhammad Smart University, Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Thank you. It's very interesting to see this recommendation. It's very hard work and very well done. Thank you. My question is, sometimes we are speaking about the assessment as an issue, right? Whether as a skills for teacher or for training, right? Professional development and training for teacher also. To what level of intervention can TTF, adopt or not adopt some good example or practices that comes from a specific country? This is very important. We have a good model like Singapore. I have to speak with this lady, very, very nice lady. And actually, I kept this question in my mind when we were in the car coming from the airport, remember? So it's an issue. There is good practice or very, very distinguished practice in some countries. My question is, to what level can we adopt or other country adopt or not adopting this good example, and you can reflect this issue in your recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a question for both subgroups?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, I don't know what you guys have eaten, but you should, you must have a very, yes, madam.
There you go.
I saw something, hold on.
Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Carol Rowe, and I'm from Jamaica. I saw one of the recommendations was that you integrate and promote the role and image of TVET in education and training and in sectorial policies. Integrate and promote. Could you help me to understand how you would integrate them? Because to me, training is one thing and education is on the other side.
No, not yet. We'll take a few more questions. I saw the hand somewhere here. No? Yes, please. Are you okay with the French? Okay. Please, yes. Attendez s'il vous plaît, le casque. Please, can you bring us the phone?
Over there, please.
Yes.
Question.
Wi-Fi. Okay. Oh.
Bring two. Get on. Thank you very much. Okay.
French?
French.
English, right? Spanish. Spanish? Right.
Okay? Yes, allez-y.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. My name is Sapita Diallo from Senegal. I had a question for the first speaker. She talked about the well-being of children, of the child in the teaching process. Well, I had a question, especially about the situation that I have noticed in French-speaking countries, especially in West Africa. There are many conflict situations during the school year, and my question, therefore, is what must you do to ensure that the right to children's education is taken into account in the process for teaching, ensuring that the child has a right to express his freedom and that this should be taken into account?
Maybe, would you like to? You can come, or you can. Would you like to start? Thank you.
Sorry. So thank you very much for the question regarding children well-being, especially in French-speaking country, West Africa. Your question was about the, let me say, not only practical solution, because you ask us as a group, not me, I hope so, what must be doing that the children should have the right within the system of education to express their freedom. Was it the right question? Yeah. So I think it's really important to, no, it was such a, no? The file, repeat, because it was this.
Excuse. Sorry. My problem was that the right to education of the children themselves, because what we have seen is that you can see that the school year is completely put into a problem because sometimes there are conflict situations and their school year is disrupted. We have children who have taking exams because their school year is disrupted, and we have situations where children cannot go to their classes because, for example, teachers are exercising their right to ensure that their union rights are taken into account. So what can we do for the children to ensure that their right to education is taken into account while at the same time taking into account the right of the teachers? What can we do? We have to ensure that the right to children to education to take be seen as a priority in this situation.
Fully agree with you that children should have the right to the education. However, as our group said, we should take into consideration the context within the education happens. So, you tackle very significant issues because there are different, let me say, dimensions of this issue. One of the issue, it is the global perspective, and we should look how we can work on the peace within the world, because you didn't mention directly about this, but it was about the violence, about some, let me say, crisis. So, if we would like to protect the children's right to education, first of all, we should, as a human being, to work on ourselves and to think how we can live in the world without any walls, to live in the world where we recognize diversities and when we can create the space for everyone to live properly. So it is a huge issue, and it's not, it's not simple during such a discussion to give, especially you, because you are interested in it, to give the solutions. We have a lot of people who are really concerned about this. We have some foundations, we have voluntaries who go to Africa to help children to have the right to the education, even though within the country there is a very hard situation. So I agree that sometimes even children suffer because of, let me say, adults' problem. We should think how to help children. For instance, now I will give example of Poland because I have this opportunity. In Monday we will celebrate the 100 years of independence of our country. We lose independence for 123 years. And also we were thinking how to help children, how to help a nation to preserve the nation identity. And our teachers, they offer a lot of tuitions, and they offer, let me say, it was the private practice, and they work on the way how to preserve Polish as a language. So they, they try to help each other as much as possible, even though we lose our, let me say, independence. So I know that you probably exactly knows what we should done, but I will not dare to give any solution apart from that we should respect each other as a human being.
I was not able to get the whole question, but I'll try to answer the question you asked about the recommendation dealing with the integration of teacher training. Is that right? Education and training. Okay. Well, that recommendation aims at enhancing the engagement or the relationship that should exist between training teachers, not only pre-service and in-service teachers, but the relationship that should exist between preparing teachers and okay, I need to have a look at, it could be good to have the recommendation. If I could, maybe, if you could read it aloud again, please, so that I can, because I don't have it here, so I need to elaborate on that.
Can you put the slide
That would help, yes.
for the second presentation, please?
Okay, that's right. So this aims at empowering and reinforcing the image and the integration that should exist between TVET institutions and sectoral government, secondary schools, education, because for part of the discussion focused on this sense of this feeling of isolation that TVET institutions have. So there is a strong need of empowering TVET education, and by integrating, we believe that by integrating TVET education as part of the sectoral policies and as part of the different approaches, not only in education, but also as part of the policies that governments establish and pass, well, that might help empower and reinforce the image that TVET should have. That's somehow what we wanted to capture in that recommendation. Anyway, if maybe someone else from the panel maybe could elaborate a little bit more about this recommendation of integration. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's all right.
So I suppose we can take a second set of questions. Before that, would you like to make some comments? Microphone to the gentleman first, and then goes to the question. Thank you. Sorry.
So just to further explanation on the integration of TVET in education and training. Actually, this is the main issue all over the world, that TVET is the second priority or the second choice for the students. So when, I mean, the policy should in place put it the TVET in the education as well. Means that the policy must have kind of we call it in the national qualification framework, that all the students from TVET path with can further their training or their education up to a higher level, maybe up to the level 8 PhD, for example. Not just stop in certain level only. That is one of the initiatives that should be addressed by the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you very much. I would really like to understand this problem. And it has to do with the quality of the training, of teacher training. Of course, we want well-trained teachers or highly qualified. And I do not know if it's a problem that, if I have really understood, but you say that a new training program is needed. That is a new program for trainers that is based on research. I would like to know then, this new research-based program, I think that a program for trainers, that is a program that takes into account the quality of trainers should really be focused on the need for training for the objectives that we want to achieve, and not really on research, because research should be taken at another level, at a more general level. But when we talk about specifically about teachers who are working and who have to have continuing training, can we talk about a new research-based program? But I think rather this should be based on the risks and all of that, the acquired skills and everything that we have noticed to be deficits or gaps in the training. That is what our focus should be. Training is an action, and on the basis of this action, we can see the reaction, and we can negotiate, and we can see how we can correct things, what does not work, and go along with what works. So I do not know if it's a question of translation. I hope that.
Yes, merci beaucoup. Ça, c'est la question pour la sub-theme 1. Okay.
That's the question from sub-theme 1.
We have a few time for a couple of more questions and comments, even from the same group. If you have some questions or additions, you're welcome. Suddenly it has become very quiet. I'm really worried. Okay, DJ. Okay, d'accord. Can you stand up? Can you all stand up, please? We do a little energizer so that you come up with some question. What should we do? Okay. Yes. Can you use your body to write teachers? T. E. A. Or A.
That's it.
And C. H. E. I don't know how to do R. R. Vous voulez?
Tout le monde.
Okay.
Le toit va tomber.
Le toit va tomber.
The roof is about to fall. We have to keep the roof up. We have to keep the roof up. Hold the roof up. But bend your knees so that we can really hold the roof up properly. And now it's the walls that are coming in on us. We have to push the walls back. Push the walls back. After that, we go into position and push. And then we go back. After this, rub your hands together. Rub your hands together. 20 degrees, 30 degrees of warmth. And then we agree up to 100 degrees.
Merci beaucoup. Okay, now, I think we are filled with energy, so I will take a couple of questions or comments. Any hands? Yes, madam. Microphone, please.
From here.
So, madam in red.
Thank you very much. My name is Esther. I think in all the discussions that we've had, and including the one that has just been presented, sub-theme 1 and 2, there has been no mention of the teachers' unions. Maybe I have, it's different the way it happens in my country, but anytime you want to do anything with teachers, the unions come up opposing. So it's like they are always against the government. And because teachers are so many, and they are in every home, what teachers do, you know they are the next government, because there is a child in every house who goes to school. So in my country, when they say there is going to be a strike, it's a national strike, because every child, every home has a child who is not going to school. So in all our deliberations at this level, at a global level, where, and in these two sub-themes, where do you see the teachers' unions coming in, and what kind of recommendations can we make, not to antagonize the teachers' unions, but somehow to make it possible for us to work with the teachers? I hope I'm clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this excellent question. Any other questions? No? Going, gone. Okay, so with these two questions, would you like to come and respond? Maybe Joanna first?
Thank you so much for this question. I will start with the answer for the second question about the teacher unions. As I said, in the time when I presented the recommendations, I mentioned that I have to, let me say, select the things that happen during the discussion. It's impossible to have 15 minutes and to collect every idea and to put everything on the slides in order to present the issue. So thank you so much that you mentioned the issue about the teacher union, because I think that it's a real problem for a lot of countries. But for instance, when we take into account the issue of teacher professionalism, by definition regarding different research, we think about teachers' union, because teachers' union is a kind of the representative of teachers, and it's a kind of the, let me say, force of teachers. Teachers can speak through teachers' unions in some countries, and what we mention in our recommendations, that it's really important to create this interactive partnership between the policy research and between the practice, and we can consider to what extent teachers' unions sometimes belong to the policy or sometimes belong to the practice. So in some countries, I agree with you that there is the situation that we even can say that it's a kind of the invisible fight, that whatever government can offer, teachers' unions are against, because, for instance, teachers, they can lose some privileges. So for sure, we should take into account teachers' union and think how to mobilize them in order to create better conditions for teacher professional development, in fact. Regarding the first question, just before our lovely exercises, the question about this, let me say, new program for teacher training. Maybe I didn't mention this properly, so sorry for this, but our colleague from South Africa, Professor Emma, she mentioned about the specific doctoral program for teacher educators. So it's not the, let me say, the normal training for teacher educators, but at the higher level. Therefore, she mentioned that it's really important to base this doctoral program, by definition, this doctoral program on the research. However, why I put this on the recommendation and I decided to mention about this. When we think about the teachers, sometimes we use the concept that teachers, their work should be research-based. They should work on the evidence, not only on their own intuitions, let me say, experience, expertise, but also they should use the tools that they have in order to diagnose children. And sometimes, we have teachers who go through the teacher education, then there are teachers educators, and simply they can forget about this, that they have such tools and they can base their practice on research. So in this way we recognize why research, even we use the concept of creating the research cultures within different, let me say, teacher education program in order to develop education. So we didn't mention things that are by definition very obvious, that teachers training for teacher educators, because you mentioned about this, should be focused on the pedagogy, on normative dimension, on methodology, how to teach children. So we didn't have this pragmatic point of view and normative, because we treated this that it is, let me say, that everyone knows about this. We would like to add something to the discussion, and therefore we mention about this research culture-based teacher education program for teacher education, especially at the level of the doctoral program. Yeah, thank you.
Very briefly, with regards to question 2, Teachers Union, there is a transversal recommendation we made, that is to continue to build on platforms, networking, and collaboration among teachers, and the workforce, the TVET workforce, somehow is embedded therein. However, it might have been, maybe you felt it was necessary to highlight it. So, but we approached it that way. That's it.
Super. So thank you very much. I am not going to summarize this very rich presentations and questions and answers, but I just would like to say, teachers, we are the frontline providers for quality education, which every child, every learner has. So I think we have probably the most important profession in the world, teachers. And yet, teachers' socioeconomic status is not high, and especially for Tibet teachers, we have a lot to do. But it was very clear from these two sub-theme discussions that teaching is a lifelong learning. So teachers continue to learn, and this is a good example for every student, every learner. The teachers themselves continue to learn, continuous professional development, so children also would learn how to learn. I would like to remind you 4 pillars of learning: learning to know, learning to do, and learning to live together, and learning to be. I think these 4 pillars of education are the most important pillars for the 21st century education. So please join me in putting your hands for the excellent reporting from these 2 sub-themes. Thank you very much. So I would like to invite you. You are welcome to stay here, or you would like to. Okay, you stay. So please, Patrick and Natalia, would you like to come over? So Patrick, you're going to. Okay.